Code Vein is a Dark Souls-inspired game that, in my opinion, far surpasses its inspiration. While it might not have hit the level of Bloodborne or Sekiro, it's still a fantastic game with a great art style, solid level design, a good challenge, and an amazing character creator. But it's a Souls-like, so the department where it excels the most is, of course, its bosses. While the first few are hit or miss, the endgame offers some of the most challenging and fun bosses the genre has to offer. I'll be ranking all 17 of this game's bosses in order of how difficult I found them. I'll save the quality ranking for another time. So without further ado, let's go! Number 17, Oliver Collins. Oliver Collins, Code Vein's first fight, also happened to be its easiest. If you don't have a problem with dealing with the regular enemies up until this point, this fight shouldn't be a problem. He can't do anything but swing his hammer in phase 1, and his attacks have a really long wind-up. The second phase is arguably even easier because you can just stick to him and he'll miss you without even having to dodge. He does an AoE attack, but it has the smallest radius in the game, and even if it does hit you, it barely does any damage. Number 16, the Argent Wolf Berserker. He serves more as a mini-boss that guards the cathedral, which houses one of the bosses for later in the list. His attacks are very similar to second phase Collins, just quicker and they do a bit more damage. This is balanced out by the fact that you can backstab him, which can practically trivialize any fight if you just lock him in it. The only reason why this fight is higher than Collins is because of the fact the arena is about the size of an ant. Number 15, Attendant of the Relics. Apparently most people think that this is the easiest fight in the game, but I don't know if it was the fact that I used a one-handed weapon or that I'm just too greedy with my hits, but this fight gave me a lot more trouble than the first two. She moves lightning quick but doesn't do a lot of damage or have a lot of health, just like my character. Most players say this fight is just for lore, but she managed to kill me unlike the first two, and that gives her the spot. Number 14, Queen's Knight Reborn. This is a harder version of an earlier game boss, with way more health, way more attack damage, and he teleports way more. You might be wondering if he's harder, why is he lower on the list? Well, he might be objectively more challenging. You fight him in the last area of the game, and what comes with that is experience. After I beat him, I thought it was the same boss with a different color scheme. I had to Google it to find out he was harder. So he's lower because it took me way less time to beat him than his counterpart. Number 13, Insatiable Despot. The first phase of this fight is honestly sad. You can sit behind him, wait for a combo to end, and then wail on him. He's really similar to the Cleric Beast from Bloodborne in a lot of ways, just easier, if it weren't for his second phase. He trades his blades for a massive axe and has a drastically increased moveset. In this phase, he chains together combos really quickly that can almost be a one-hit kill if you get stuck in them from the beginning. But you can also stay under his legs and just fight him that way, so it should be relatively easy. Number 12, Successor of the Ribcage. This fight consists of you running from one side of the arena to the other, dodging all sorts of fire, ice, and shock magic, hitting her a few times, and then running from the AoE. She'll always go to the opposite side of the arena, so you can get the jump on her like that. She can't do much of anything when you're close to her, so just get a few hits in and run. Being too aggressive is what's going to get you killed in the first phase. The second phase, on the other hand, has a practically undodgeable fire laser that does massive damage, and she gets a shield, which is a trade-off for not being able to teleport anymore. So just stick to her back and dodge her swipes, and keep attacking till the fight's over. This is why you don't get dogs. This is like the 7th time this has happened. Number 11, Invading Executioner. After getting through the hell that is Howling Pit, it's nice to get a fun fight with some solid difficulty. Her first phase is a total joke. I could repeatedly stagger her with my one-handed weapon and barely had to block. But the second I got into the second phase, I was dead. Those dashes and the spin at the center of the arena were the bane of my existence. She can kill you and your partner in a single dash. Her other attacks stay the same but do more damage and are faster. She has a spin that she can add to her combos, and no longer has set combos but can attack you in any order she wants with all of the above. So, no, it's actually nothing like the first phase. Number 10, Queen's Knight. Wow, this fight gave me lots of trouble. It takes place relatively early in the game, so I still wasn't fully comfortable with the abilities you have, and I was severely underleveled. Not that I could use any of my abilities anyway, considering the minimal amount of reprieve this fight offers, especially in the second phase. He fights you just like his late game counterpart, but you have less health, less damage, less game experience. Constant teleporting, his attacks are very hard to dodge for an early game player. Anyone with a heavy weapon, I honestly don't know how you would beat this fight. Number 9, Successor of Claw. This fight is super mid, not just in difficulty but in quality too, so I don't have much to say about it. Her attacks consist mainly of claw swipes, which are easy enough to dodge, but she can dodge you just as easily as you can dodge her. It would be a stalemate if it weren't for her rare sword swipes, which do a lot of damage, are very quick, and leave her open for a decent amount of time, letting you get some good hits in. The difficulty mainly lies in her dashes and fireballs you pretty much have to iframe. She's kind of like the fire version of Executioner, just with more damage and not as memorable. Number 8, Gilded Hunter. This boss's second phase would be the hardest thing in the whole game if it weren't for the fact that he debuffs and lets you beat on him. I'm making no claims that it's easy, but it's not as hard as people think it is. If you had to deal with his lightning quick attacks and at the same time hit him, he would be one of the hardest bosses in the game. But his AoE gives you a chance to heal, and when he debuffs, you have a good 10 seconds to just hit him. If you can kill him at this point, you're golden. If he rebuffs, you're pretty much screwed. Number 7, Successor of Breath. Boreal Brutes are some of the most difficult and most fun enemies in the game, so making a boss using that blueprint was a pretty good idea. He's very similar to them, just with far more health and an ice spike attack that killed me more times than I care to mention. It took me 7 attempts to even get to his second phase, and that's where the fun begins. He keeps his punches and ice spikes, but trades his shield for dramatically increased speed and an AoE that covers 90% of his arena. Most of the time this would have been countered by him having weaker attacks, but a trend you will probably start to notice as we get later in the list. All the bosses from this point on can one-shot you with blisteringly quick attacks. The margin for error is practically non-existent, and it just gets worse from here. Number 6, Butterfly of Delirium. I don't want to know how many people made it past Oliver Collins, got to this fight, and then quit one of my favorite games of the year, but I assume it's a lot. It's not that her attacks do too much damage, or that they're hard to dodge, it's the poison. Maybe someone can prove me wrong on this one, but you're fighting a boss who has insane poison damage without the ability to ward off poison, meaning, you're poisoned, you're dead. Plain and simple. Even though her attacks aren't as complex or nearly as damaging as Breath's, they're still quite challenging for early game. This fight is frustrating beyond belief. It would be alright if it was the Dark Souls style of poison, which is annoying as all hell, but it takes about 20 to 15 hits to actually be poisoned. This takes 2. If you can beat it though, you won't see a boss you'll hate more than this one until pretty much the end game. Number 5, Skull King. Going from an absolute crap boss to a fantastic one. Skull King is such a fun fight that I wrote nothing about him while I was fighting him, because every time he killed me, I just wanted to fight him again. He's pretty much the Lady Maria of Code Vein. Very fast, combos ranging from 2 hits to 8, and lots of phases. Skull King's phases are a bit different from the other bosses though. Instead of getting new moves, he just buffs. More range, higher damage, speed, etc. He goes from as tough as the guards in the hallway leading up to him, to being able to get you locked in a melee combo from across the arena that can easily kill you if you're not careful. When he gets down to 20% HP, use any heals you have left, because there's no chance you'll actually be able to use them beyond this point. It's absolute chaos and I love it. Number 4, Juzo Medo. If Skull King is Lady Maria, and we're sticking to Bloodborne references, then Juzo Medo is Gehrman. Both are similar in the fact that the first phases feel like a fair fight between 2 warriors, and the second is a culmination of everything you've needed to know throughout your journey. Medo is a perfectly balanced boss, no bullshit. You die, it's your fault. Every attack he has in the first phase lures you into a false sense of security, before he pulls out the really tasty looking rock lightsaber he has. I got him down to sub 20% health every time I fought him, but I tend to get even more aggressive than I already am in these type of games when the boss gets really low health. So he plays into my weaknesses perfectly. Then if you add the bombs that rotate around you at the start of the second phase and his one-shot magic, you get a second phase of an already challenging boss that's way harder. Number 3, Successor of the Throat. And now we jump from two of my favorite bosses of all time to one of the worst ones. This fight has two massive problems. One, everything is the same color and therefore I can't see half of the attacks she uses. And two, this grab is bullshit. Her other attacks are slow to a degree where I dodge way before she even attacks, but that's my bad. Being grabbed through the sand while dodging attacks I can barely see is not. And plus, when you die it takes 10 minutes to get back to the fight. No enemies, just walking. While there are more difficult bosses, there are none more frustrating. With every other fight, when I died, it was my fault, other than the time my controller died while fighting Medo. 90% of this time, this boss killed me with attacks I didn't even comprehend how to dodge, or needed 120 vision to see. Number 2, Blade Bearer and Cannoneer. Anybody who's played Dark Souls will remember Ornstein and Smo. And this fight seems like it takes a lot of inspiration from that one. One slow boss, one fast one. Pillars to split them up. But no, this fight is infinitely harder than one of the hardest bosses I've ever fought. There's no slow-fast contrast, you just have the fastest enemy in the game slashing you with random combos, making ice sprout out of the ground, zooming at you from across the arena in 0.2 seconds, and killing you in 2 hits, and a spellcaster who can spam you with fire circles, flamethrowers, and fireballs, even when you're not in his line of sight. This fight requires perfect timing for dodges and attacks. I use one of the fastest weapons in the game, and Blade Bearer could still hit me almost every time. And no matter how good you are, you're going to be fighting them for a good 10 minutes. My winning attempt took me 15 and I got super lucky. This fight would have been my number 1 if it wasn't for the fire and ice abilities, which practically cut their damage in half. But even with that, this fight is not only one of the hardest in the game, but of all time. And finally, number 1, the Virgin Born. The final boss in Code Vein is also its hardest. It takes the base concept of a beast boss from Bloodborne, but removes all of their weaknesses and amplifies their strengths. The best strategy for beating most bosses in Bloodborne is to attack it from behind. That also kinda works here, but he takes way less damage when you hit his legs. So your best option is to hit his stomach. The problem with me is that I can't reach his stomach with my tiny little sword, so I have to spend a good 25 minutes dodging his massive AoEs, super fast slashes, untelegraphed jumps, and unavoidable lightning barrage. Good thing this fight is great, because if it wasn't as good as it was, I don't think I would have ever finished this game. This fight took me 6 hours, 4 one day, giving up because the sun was rising and I still hadn't gone to bed, and 2 the next day. So I'd probably say this is my second hardest boss of all time. Thanks for watching, and now for the obligatory, what did you think about this video? If you played Code Vein, what boss was your favorite and which did you think was the hardest? Please remember to like and subscribe or I'll be taken out back and shot and replaced with a clone of myself again, just like back in summer. Bye bye!